We're going to look at how to simplify when multiplying fractions. Previously, we multiplied fractions by multiplying the numerators, then multiplying the denominators, and then simplifying in the end. Today we're going to look at a way to make things easier and to simplify before you multiply. Here is a fraction, 8/12, and as you know, 8/12 is not in simplest form, and so I'm going to write it in simplest form. And so what I need to do is think of a number that evenly divides into 8 and 12, and so I can divide 8 and 12 by 4, as you know. And so 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. And 8/12 in simplest form is 2/3. And I know you know this, but I wanted to point out what happened here when I simplified it. I divided a numerator and a denominator by the same whole number. So I divided the numerator by a whole number and the denominator by the same whole number. Here I have 6/10 times 8/9. I have it at the top and the bottom. On the top, I'm going to solve it like we have been solving multiplying fractions. So I have 6/10 times 8/9, so I'm going to multiply the numerators. So I'm going to multiply 6 times 8, which is 48. And then I have 10 times 9, which is 90. And so my answer is 48/90ths. And of course that's not simplified because you can divide the numerator and denominator by 2. They're both even. And so I'm going to divide the numerator and denominator by 2. So 48 divided by 2 is 24, and 90 divided by 2 is 45. Oh geez, this still isn't in simplest form, so I need to simplify it. I can divide 24 and 45 by 3. So 24 divided by 3 is 8, and 45 divided by 3 is 15. And now I finally have 8/15 in the end. Now that was a lot of work, and I had to work with such large numbers. So down at the bottom, I'm going to show you a different way to solve it. And what we're going to do is we are going to simplify before we multiply the numerator and denominator. What you need to do is find one numerator and one denominator that can be divided by the same whole number, just like we did in the last side when we simplified that fraction. So now I'm looking here at the 6 and the 9, and that's one numerator and one denominator, and they can both be divided by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And now I see this 8 and this 10, that's one numerator and one denominator, can be divided by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now I have two new numerators, the 2 and the 4, and two new denominators, the 5 and the 3. So I'm going to multiply the numerators. 2 times 4, which is 8, and 5 times 3, which is 15, and I'm done. And my answer doesn't even need to be simplified. In fact, if you find all of the instances where you can simplify, your answer will always be in simplest form as long as you're multiplying proper fractions. Now here I have 1/8 times 4/5. So I want to try to simplify before I multiply to make things easier. So I have to find one numerator and one denominator that can be divided by the same whole number. So I'm noticing that the 4 and the 8 can be divided by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. I don't see any more cases where I can simplify, so now I'm going to multiply the numerators. 1 times 1 is 1, and I'm going to multiply the denominators. 2 times 5 is 10. And there I've got my answer, 1/10. And I should always double check that it's in simplest form before I move on, and yes, 1/10 is in simplest form. Now I have 6/7 times 4/6. So I want to look for one numerator and one denominator that can be divided by the same whole number. Look at this, 6 and 6, they can both be divided by 6. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. 6 divided by 6 is 1. Now I'm ready to multiply. 1 times 4 is 4, and 7 times 1 is 7. And my answer is 4/7. And of course, before I move on, I should still double check that it is in simplest form, and yes, 4/7 is in simplest form. Now we have 4/18 times 12/14. So now I can see that the 12 and the 14 can both be divided by 2. That's one numerator and one denominator. So 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. See, really all I did was simplify that fraction. 12/14 is the same as 6/7. Now I'm looking here, and I'm noticing that the 6 and the 18 can both be divided by 6. So 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 18 divided by 6 is 3. And now I don't see any more cases where I can simplify, so I'm going to multiply the numerators. 4 times 1 is 4, and 3 times 7 is 21. And I want to double check that it is in simplest form, and it is. Now I have 3/4 times 1/9. So I'm trying to look for one numerator and one denominator that can be divided by the same whole number. Here we go. The 3 and the 9 can both be divided by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So there, I've simplified. Now I can multiply the numerators. 1 times 1 is 1, and 4 times 3 is 12. And of course, I want to double check that my answer is in simplest form, and it is. Now I have 4/7 times 8/9. And now I'm looking to see if there's any cases where I can simplify. Perhaps you're thinking that the 4 and the 8 can be divided by 4. But that's not going to work because that's not one numerator and one denominator. That's two numerators. So in this case, there's no simplifying. There's no numbers that can be divided evenly into a numerator and denominator. So I'm just going to multiply the numerators. 4 times 8 equals 32. And multiply the denominators. 7 times 9 is 63. And before I move on, I want to double check that it is in simplest form. And in fact, it is. Now we have 8/12 of 1/3. And I know of means to multiply, so I'm just going to put a multiplication symbol right over the of, and I'm just going to multiply. Now I'm looking to see if I can simplify, and yes I can. The 8 and the 12 can both be divided by 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. And now I'm ready to multiply the numerators. 2 times 1 is 2, and 3 times 3 is 9. And I'm checking and double checking to make sure this is in simplest form, and 2/9 is in fact in simplest form. Now I have 2/3 times 1/5. This one doesn't have any simplifying, so I can just multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. 2 times 1 is equal to 2, and 3 times 5 is equal to 15. And I should double check that my answer is in simplest form, and yes it is. So 2/3 times 1/5 is equal to 2/15. Now I have 4/10 times 2/8. So I want to find one numerator and one denominator that can be divided by the same whole number. I see one, the 4 and the 8. You might see some others, and in fact, it doesn't matter what order you simplify it. So I'm going to divide the 4 and the 8 by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. And now I'm noticing that the 2 and the 10 can be divided by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. And there's no more simplifying that can be done. So 1 times 1 equals 1, and 5 times 2 is 10. And of course this fraction's in simplest form because the numerator is a 1 and it's a proper fraction. So 1/10 is my answer. 4/10 times 2/8 is equal to 1/10. now I have 1/12 of 8/11. So we know that of means to multiply. I'm just going to change that right into a multiplication symbol. And now I'm looking and I can see that the 8 and the 12 are both divisible by 4. So I'm going to divide them by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. And I can see that there's no other simplifying that can be done. So now I'm going to multiply the numerators. 1 times 2 equals 2. Multiply the denominators. 3 times 11 equals 33. And I'm going to double check that's in simplest form. And yes, 2/33 is in simplest form. Now I have 6/8 times 1/9 here. And so I'm looking for one numerator and one denominator that can be divided by the same whole number. And you can divide the 6 by 2 and the 8 by 2. So I'm going to divide this 6 and this 8 by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now there's one more case where we can cancel, but I'm going to pretend like I didn't notice it. So now I'm going to multiply the numerators. 3 times 1 is 3, and multiply the denominators. 4 times 9 is 36. And all that happens is that your answer isn't in simplest form, and hopefully you'll catch that. And I can see, oh yeah, 3 and 36 can both be divided by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is equal to 1, and 36 divided by 3 is equal to 12, and I get my answer 1/12. As you can see, it's easier to simplify beforehand, but if you happen to miss one, it's no big deal. You just simplify at the end like I did.